there's room and there's need for queer stories to be told.
It's about representing different types of queer individuals and just having as many varied characters as possible. I don't think we would have been able to do what we do 10, 15 years ago.
Welcome to the QueerTech podcast. This show is where QueerTech professionals, entrepreneurs, and leaders come together to share insights, challenges, and success because queer innovators deserve the mic. I'm your host, Nafal Testani. I use he, they pronoun, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of QueerTech. This season, supported by the Canadian Media Fund, we're taking an unfiltered look at what it really means to be QS LGBTQI+ in tech today. We'll explore the barriers we face, the resilience we built, and the strategies to thrive in an industry that still has work to do, from career growth to leadership, systematic challenges to real solutions. This season is your guide to navigating tech as your authentic self. On today's episode, we're sitting down with Olivier Lucier, creative director and co-founder at Low Birth Games. Our show's previous host and producer, Dae Courtney, led this conversation and packed in key insights on the Canadian indie game ecosystem and efforts to make the subsector more inclusive. Let's dive in.
Hi, my name is Olivier Lucier. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a co-founder and creative director at Low Bird Games. So I actually co-founded Low Bird Games with two of my cousins in 2019. And our goal was to create games with a diverse cast of characters and of a diverse team making the games that we make, and also making games for a diverse and often forgotten audience.
Can I ask you a little bit about your educational background? If you could talk just through what you studied, what your interests were, and how that brought you into gaming, if it did, or what the jump was.
As a kid, I first wanted to write novels, and eventually I discovered a passion for cinema. So I studied cinema both in Cégep and university. I really love it as a medium, but I didn't quite find my place in the industry. I'll be generalizing a little bit, but it's an industry where people are usually have a lot of self-confidence, and there's also a lot of competition. So I didn't feel like I quite fit in. And eventually it's really one of my cousins had studied, at the time she was still studying in video games actually. And she was showing me what was possible because growing up, I knew mostly about Mario Kart and those types of party games, which are very fun, but I didn't necessarily see a potential for me working on those types of games because I'm a storyteller. I like literature, cinema. At the end of the day, I like telling stories. So what really attracted me to video games was, first of all, the opportunity to work with my cousins who have been working with on creative projects since I was a kid, but then also the possibility to tell stories in this new medium that is really cool. It has a lot of the advantages of cinema, so picture and sound, but it also has interactivity, which adds a layer that is very exciting. I found myself a bit more welcome in the gaming industry, especially founding Low Bird. I was lucky enough to be able to choose the people I was working with. My co-founders and I were able to surround ourselves with people who are like-minded and who, even if they're different from us, we accept them as they are and they accept us as we are. So
There's two things in that really stuck out to me, and they both have to do with building your own place in the world. I know what you mean when you're saying the film industry requires, there's a certain character that sometimes is in that world. And it makes sense. You're on set all the time. There's this whole persona built with it. And then there's also building your own team. Two of these things, both the technology aspect, being able to use technology to make a mark on the world and be able to transmit our personalities, even if we're a little bit more shy. I like that you were able to find yourself through that medium. And then also the ability to build your own team. So as an entrepreneur, you found your own place in that sense. Do you feel like your experiences growing up and coming out and all of these things played a role in the decisions and the pursuits that you made?
I grew up as a teenager in the early 2000s. And at some point I started to realize that, maybe I like guys, maybe I'm gay. And at the time I didn't really see myself in the media I was consuming. First of all, there weren't that many queer characters on screen, but when there were queer characters, they didn't necessarily look or act like me. For instance, back in the day, in what I was watching, which was mainly mainstream media at the time, the gay characters were mostly like the cliched hairdresser who's really into fashion and all of that, which is perfectly fine.
Or the villain.
Yeah, absolutely. Or the villain. And that's perfectly fine. We also love writing at Lobert queer villains and all of that. But when it's the only type of representation and you don't quite fit with that representation, then you feel left out and you wonder, at the time I was wondering, can I be gay if I don't look and act like that? So that really taught me the importance of representation. And I think what's funny right now is that a lot of people seem to look at representation as a quota. It's like, oh, well, you already have one gay character in this film, so why do you want to add a second one? But for me, it's not about that. It's about representing different types of queer individuals and just having as many varied characters as possible, because this will allow, hopefully, people to recognize themselves in the characters. And it's impossible to represent everyone in a single work of art or a work of fiction. But my hope is that everyone will have at least one work of fiction where they will recognize themselves. For me personally, it was a big factor in the direction of just my career in general, the types of films I was making when I was in cinema. And also it was very important for me coming into games. And I was lucky enough that my co-founders wanted to do that as well. And I didn't really know the game industry at the time, but one of my cousin, Chloe, who's now our CEO, allowed me to realize that I knew that there was a lot of progress to do in the film industry. But then I looked at the gaming industry and I realized, oh, there's even more to do there. So that was really the big drive to participate in changing this industry. And some gamers are afraid. They want to take away our macho gun games or whatever, but no, you can keep your games if you want. If you like them, that's fine. But we want to offer something more, something different to maybe the types of gamers who don't have a lot of games for them out there. So that was really the drive.
Also, a real character is a macho gunslinger who's gay. That is also one of the things about the diversity of queer people, is that members of the 2S LGBTQ+ community can be anyone.
When I was in university, I directed a short film about a queer hockey player, which was very important for me because I grew up in a town where hockey was very big and most of the people were bullying me were hockey players. So I wanted to turn the stereotypes on their head and show that, yeah, anyone can be gay, not just the effeminate or the very artsy guys, but yeah, really anyone. So it's something that I'm still trying to do with our games, of just not really thinking about the characters in terms of their sexuality, but just like they're like this and like that, and also they're gay, and also they're bi or whatever.
Hey QT, did you know QueerTech is more than just this award-winning podcast? We offer 3 cohort-style programs to help you build your career in tech. QT Access helps 2S LGBTQIA+ professionals break into tech. QT Leaders empowers experienced professionals to advance their careers. And QT Founders is a startup accelerator to early first-time queer entrepreneurs. We also host quarterly QT Connects meetup in Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Ottawa, and Halifax. And don't forget QT Cubes, Canada's largest 2S LGBTQI+ tech conference. Ready to plug in? Join our community today at QueerTech.org. Okay, back to the show now.
Do you feel that leaning into your queer experience and your creativity has benefited your career and your projects?
Sure, there are challenges to being a queer entrepreneur, a queer developer, but right now, there are also a lot of opportunities. My co-founders and I were very lucky. We were in the right time at the right place, because the truth is that right now, a lot of government programs and grants and all of that have diversity quotas and all of that. Do we sometimes maybe feel like we're their token pigs? Maybe, but at the same time, it allows us to do what we do. So why not do it? We've been very lucky. And I think also just the fact that the technology to make games right now is much more accessible than it was before. So I don't think we would have been able to do what we do 10, 15 years ago, because we probably wouldn't have gotten the money and we wouldn't even have had the tools to do it. Because, for instance, the first year of development for a first game, we didn't have a programmer, but we had a game engine that was very user-friendly. And even though I had never programmed in my life, I was able to learn it with tutorials. And I programmed with big quotation marks, but I was able to program our first demo, which then allowed us to get our first investors. And from then, we were finally able to hire a real programmer. But if we hadn't been able to do that first demo, we probably would have gotten to that point where we were able to hire people. We were very lucky in many ways.
Something I think would be nice to just to touch on a little bit more is I'd love for people listening to this to take away a little bit about, if you lean into your queerness right now in terms of your creativity, to see it as a business opportunity as well. There's room and there's need for queer stories to be told, and there's business support out there for that. So that's just a really beautiful insight. It's actually a wonderful time to be a queer entrepreneur.
It's true. And it's nice that I can do what I would have wanted to do anyway. It's tricky sometimes in video games because some people want to make games in niches that are there are lots of games there already. But there is a lot of demand out there right now for queer media. So if you want to tell queer stories, there's a nice opportunity right now. It's not like some studios or companies out there you feel like, oh, they're telling queer stories just to get points or whatever. But we're lucky enough that we do it because we like it and there is actually a public for it. So it's perfect timing.
Okay, so I would like to pivot a little bit into the functional components of your entrepreneurial journey. In that very functional way that the organization came together, the way that Low Birth Games came together, you had mentioned that there were pitches and things like this. I'd like to know, what was that very practical journey like for you when you were like, maybe we're going to find someone to make this pitch to? You built the pitch. What did that feel like? How did you prep for it? What were you feeling during that time? Just that very practical journey of building a company.
For us, it all started with a summer program that we did in 2019 that was really focused on helping us and giving us the tools to be able to open an indie video game studio. So it was very targeted to what we wanted to do. But at the time, we wanted to make a game, most of all. And none of us had dreams of becoming entrepreneurs necessarily. It's not something we had foreseen in our future. So it really started to crystallize when we did that program and we did our business plan. And it really allowed us to clarify our vision for the company, what we wanted it to be. And the end of the program was a big pitch in front of a jury of people from the industry. So people from Red Barrels, Ubisoft, and there was also just like lots of people watching. So this was our first pitch experience. And we worked on days to find the best hook. And we prepared a nice PowerPoint presentation. And we rehearsed. Because some people look like maybe they're winging it. I don't know if they do, but I certainly can't. So the way that I compensate is just being as prepared as possible. But even then you get there and maybe the presentation is prepared, but there's usually a question period at the end. And sometimes they ask you questions you didn't expect. And you're like, yeah, that's a good point. So it's a bit nerve-wracking, but that was our first experience. And there was actually, there were a few cash prize at the end that we could get. And we didn't get any. And I think that's one of the challenges of pitching is that you will lose more pitches than you win them. And so it's finding the motivation and the courage to do it again and again and again, even though you get many rejections along the way. But we were lucky enough that a year later, we got our first investors who were actually some of the teachers who had taught us during the summer program. So there was a lot of luck involved in entrepreneurship. That's kind of unavoidable. Some people will be more lucky than others, but we did go through the different oops of pitching to different people and sometimes getting a yes, sometimes getting a no. And, eventually if things go well, you get enough yeses to get to a point where you can have a team and bring your project to completion. But in the case of our first game, this bid we made, it took 4 years and a half. So it's a long process.
There's some things I want to just pull from that I feel like would resonate with a lot of people's experience and also is really good advice too. It comes up in a lot of different perspectives that I've heard on career journeys in general. It's nice to hear this in the realm of entrepreneurship as well. Utilizing supports that are available, like incubators, or if someone's trying to pursue a new field, like it could be like a boot camp or something like this. Whatever it is, it's one of the opportunities that you have to build relationships. And in my experience, having gone through a digital marketing boot camp, my one teacher in particular became a mentor of mine afterwards because we actually developed a relationship. And that's a story that I've heard a few times where, when you enter into something, so if someone's entering into one of these programs, it really pays to have like an open heart and to really build relationships with the people that you're learning from. Because if your teachers were some of your first investors, obviously they were along with you for the whole thing. They saw your project maybe before it was worth investing in, when it was still the parts.
Yeah, I think we did a lot of stupid mistakes along the way. That's unavoidable, I think, especially when you start out. But I think one of the best and smartest things that we've done is surround ourselves with mentors and people with a lot more experience than we have to kind of learn from their past mistakes. And also, it's difficult sometimes to be an entrepreneur. You go through certain types of struggle that other people may not understand. So sometimes, even though you don't get direct help, just having someone who understands what you're going through can mean a lot. So we were lucky enough that when we got our first investors, we were also brought in the Asylum, which is a hub of video game companies. We share not only office space, but also just we help each other as much as we can. And so that's been very valuable for us because a few days or weeks, for instance, before releasing the game back in November 2023, we had problems with the game that we didn't know what to do. And we thankfully had the people around us in the Asylum who knew what we could do. So, and also like just business advice. We got a lot of that from the different CEOs of the other companies as well. Like, oh, is it worth it to go to this video game convention or not? Will we get as much exposure as we would want? And based on the cost of attending there, is it worth it to go? Just little stuff like that sometimes we weren't too sure. And then we got advice from our mentors. So that's very valuable.
What's your perspective on being a leader in a team? And do you feel like your experience as a queer person growing up and coming out as gay, do you feel like that plays into the things that you look for in your team and the environment that you try to create for your teammates?
Although I am queer, I also recognize that I'm very privileged. I'm a cisgender white man. So I come into it knowing what it's like to experience some discrimination, how it's like to maybe feel out of place in a work environment, stuff like that. So I always try to keep that in mind and offer the type of work environment that I myself would have liked. But I also recognize that I'm privileged in many ways and I don't know everything. So I'm trying to come at it in the mindset of learning as well, trying to learn what are different people's needs because they're not necessarily the same as my own. We're fortunate enough that we can hire people to work on our projects. And sometimes the people who work with us are more marginalized than I am. So I try to find ways to empower them, to give them the tools or the opportunities to, and it's not just me, it's my co-founders as well, giving them the tools and the opportunities to climb to higher positions or get maybe the type of experience that they wouldn't be able to get in other companies where sometimes only like the straight white men get the promotions. So it's something that we try to do, but I think we're always learning and we're always aiming to do better.
There's something about having lived in that friction of having a different experience than those around you. But it's a bit of a hard won lesson for us to be more equipped in that way to be open to people.
I think there are many things that, first of all, some people seem to think that being a good workplace or creating a good work environment is just something that you do and then it's done. But no, it's something that you constantly have to put in the work to do that because you hire new people with new intersections of identity and suddenly you're faced with a situation that you've never faced before. So you constantly have to adapt and learn and be open to making mistakes and learn from them. You'll mess up sometimes, but I think that's fine as long as you're willing to learn from those mistakes and do better next time.
I'd love for you to talk about what Low Birth is doing now.
So I wear many hats at Lowbird Games. I co-founded the company, but nowadays I'm not as much on the business side of things. I work mostly on the games as a creative director. So this is fairly similar to a movie director in cinema, with the added complexity that there's also the interactive aspect of it. So how the player can have an effect on the game's world and story and all of that. And also direct the cutscenes, the actors. I also write a bit, so I wear quite a few hats. But most of my work is spent in meetings with the different team leads, mostly to make sure that everyone is going in the same direction, that everyone understands the vision, and the vision can evolve sometimes and take ideas from many different people. But it's important that we all go more or less in the same direction. Otherwise, the end product will be a bit messy. And so our first game is This Bed We Made. It was released in November of 2023, and it's a mystery game that takes place in Montreal in the 1950s. And you play as Sophie, who's a maid who's trying to solve a mystery by snooping around the guests' bedrooms. The game released, and the reception has been really great so far, really going above and beyond our expectations. Players seem to really enjoy it. We've had people really latching on to some of our characters, especially the character of Beth, who you can romance in the game. And we've had just really great stories of people saying like, oh, this is my new favorite game, or people saying your game helped me figure out my sexuality and stuff like that. So as a developer, it's just really amazing to see, after 4.5 years of work, people enjoying what you spent so much time working on, and realizing that, yeah, it works. You know, you didn't do all of that for nothing. You're actually reaching the people that you wanted to reach. So that's really great. But we don't want to stop there. Obviously, we're already very excited to start working on our new projects. We're gonna keep working on the same type of games. So I can't say too much as of now, because it's very early on in the development, but we want to keep making mystery games. We want lots of diverse and marginalized characters. And now that we've had a bit of success, we just want to keep making bigger and better games, basically.
That's amazing. I love that. What advice would you have for other members of the 2S LGBTQ plus community and queer individuals aspiring to enter the game industry or start their own business? You've been doing very well, by the way. You played it down, but you're very eloquent. Thank you so much for sharing.
I think for people wanting to join the gaming industry, I would say that the good news is that there is a lot of progress being made right now, especially on the indie scene. I cannot really talk about what's happening like in the big, what we call AAA companies, but on the indie scene, we're seeing a lot of studios popping up around us who have similar values and concerns as we have, to create a nice working environment and to be welcoming to everyone, basically. So the advice I would give to people who want to join the gaming industry is that sadly there are some studios who are a bit lagging behind. So I would suggest doing a bit of research into the studios that you're applying to, and talking, if you can, to the people who work there, kind of get a picture of the workplace that maybe you'll be joining soon, and seeing if it is as welcoming as you'd like it to be. Because I think we are welcoming as a company at Lowbird, but I know many companies around us who are very nice and welcoming as well. So I think that's important, because especially in video games, I mean, other industries as well, but in video games, there's very much this notion of like, oh, we're passionate, so we can do long hours and work overtime and all of that, and it's okay because we're passionate. But at the end of the day, it's still work. At the end of the day, you still want to go back home and have some free time and see your loved ones and all of that. So I think it's important to have a good work-life balance, and also have a workplace that isn't toxic and where you can feel respected and loved and all of that. So I think you can definitely thrive and have a lot of fun in the video game industry. You just have to kind of find the right place to go to. But those exist, and there are more and more popping up as we speak.
Do you feel that queer people make good entrepreneurs?
Oh my God, that's a good question. Well, I guess queer people are no stranger to facing challenges and overcoming them and just finding creative ways to get around. So I'd say that in that sense, maybe entrepreneurship is a particularly good fit for queer people because there's a lot of that in entrepreneurship.
Thank you. Yes, you, for tuning into this episode of the QT podcast. Queering the tech ecosystem is a big mission, and we're so grateful to have you with us on this journey. This episode was produced by Lauren Hicks, mixed by Ryan Richards of Rival Digital, and the interview was conducted and edited by Dae Courtney. From the entire QueerTech community, we want to send Dae and their new baby all the health, happiness, and joyful moment in the world. Feeling fabulously inspired, you can help our show reach even more queering tech professionals. Subscribe to our show, give us a great rating, or write us a review. Until next time, keep queering the tech ecosystem.